Hi everyone, welcome back to the 21 and Sensory episode with me, Emily. On today's episode, I actually have another fellow Emily on, which is very exciting. Today's special guest is Emily, who you might know from her Twitter at It's Emily Katy. So Emily is a 20-year-old autistic student, mental health activist, and autism advocate. She's also a blogger, trustee for the Autistic Girls Network, member of her trust's CAMHS Young People's Council, public governor for her NHS trust, and a National Autistic Society advisor. That's a lot of things, all of which I'll be asking her more about. She's also a host on the hashtag #NotAloneTalk on Twitter, which I will be chatting to her about as well. And Emily has given lots of different talks in different health settings and written many articles on her own experiences. So, Emily, would you like to say hello?
Hello. Wow, that was so cool to be introduced.
No, that was perfect. Thanks so much for being up for coming on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
No worries. So let's jump right in. So I messaged Emily on Twitter because that's where I follow her, and she's been very lovely at sharing the 21 and Sensory podcast when she's been listening to it on horse rides, which is lovely. And I was like, we've got to have Emily on. I think it'd be a great chat. So let's get right into it. Let's go with any diagnoses you have. Obviously, no pressure to talk about anything you don't want to, but it would be good to know when you got your autism diagnosis and, a bit more about your journey.
Yeah, of course. So my autism diagnosis was probably, was the last diagnosis that I got, actually, which was in, I think it was in 2019. I don't know. Oh, wait, I was 16, I'm turning 17, and now I'm 20. So how many years ago was that? I can't remember.
I'm so bad at maths.
Oh, no, it was 2018. I think it was 2018. But I was about to turn 17, and I had kind of gathered like a lot of different mental health diagnoses before then. So at the time I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, depression, and I had a mixed personality disorder diagnosis of emotionally unstable and anancastic, which is the same as obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And then when I went for my autism assessment, they were basically like, no, that's not true. You're autistic and you also have OCD.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so really those kind of diagnoses sort of changed when you were actually seen by someone who understood you?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, gosh, that's really, there's kind of crazy to be kind of given those labels and then for them not actually to be true. Did you find that quite difficult?
Well, I think at the start, because when I was given the diagnoses of the personality disorders, like the diagnostic criteria I actually really related to, because a lot of it was like, a lot of it can be quite similar in presentation to autism, especially I think a lot of autistic women are misdiagnosed with personality disorders before they're diagnosed with autism. And so like the EUPD diagnosis, it's like difficulty controlling emotions, impulsive behavior, difficulty with relationships, and then obsessive compulsive personality disorder is like rigidity, needs structure, routine, likes things to be the same, things like that. So I kind of related to the criteria a lot. But then I think as time went on and I learned more about autism while I was waiting for my assessment, I think I started to identify with that diagnosis a lot more. And when I was diagnosed with autism, it felt like quite a lot of relief. Because I mean, I know people who are diagnosed with like EUPD, which is emotionally unstable personality disorder and stuff, and they find the diagnosis really helpful. But I think for me, I was starting to find like it didn't quite explain my experiences, and to kind of be told that my personality was disordered, I felt really difficult myself.
Yeah.
I know obviously not everyone does, but I did. And so to be told that I was autistic was quite a big relief, and felt quite enlightening.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice to hear that it was kind of a positive experience rather than one that was kind of more negative? And what kind of led you from the kind of the diagnoses that you already had towards an autism diagnosis? Was it something that was kind of recommended to you?
Well, kind of, but also more by family members. So basically, I was in a CAMHS unit at the time. Should I say what that stands for? I don't know.
Actually, that's probably a good idea. It is a bit confusing.
Yeah. Okay. So I was in a CAMHS unit at the time, which is a child and adolescent mental health services, which we have here in the UK. So I was basically on a hospital ward for adolescents between the ages of 13 and 18, I think it was. So I'd been admitted there because I was just in a really bad place and was kind of a risk to myself. And so yeah, they admitted me to this ward. And while I was there, it's very interesting because looking back, I can like recognize how many meltdowns I had while I was there that they kind of put down to, well, in my notes, it describes it as hysteric attacks, but really I was just completely overwhelmed. The environment wasn't great for me and wasn't a great experience. But so while I was there, I actually met a girl there who was autistic, and it's so bad looking back because, oh my gosh, the internalized ableism I had of what, I don't know if it was internalized ableism because I didn't know it was autistic, but basically the idea that I had of autism at the time was so just based on stereotypes. It was quite offensive, actually, the idea of autism I had at the time, because I didn't know much about it, really. And so when I met this girl who was autistic, I was like, well, you don't seem autistic. And that's like obviously the attitudes that I work hard to like kind of fight against now. But at the time I kind of had those views in my head. I was like, wait, but you don't seem autistic to me. You just seem like anyone else. And so that was the first thing. The second thing was that I was studying psychology at the time, and I remember reading a case study at the unit school about OCD and autism and about all the overlaps between it. And when I was like looking at, that was the first time I think I'd come across like what autism, like read about what autism actually was. I was like, wow, that sounds like me a little bit.
Okay. The
professionals in the unit were kind of throwing around the term autistic traits, but there was no like desire for them to like, they didn't think that I was autistic. But my parents kind of pushed for a diagnosis in the end, because I went home on leave one day with a list of why I think I could be autistic, and I gave them this list and we sat around the kitchen table and I went through it point by point, and they were like, they were like, well, yeah, those points do make sense. They are you, but are you autistic? I don't know. So they took it to the psychiatrist at the unit and they sat with him for like, I think a couple of hours going through my childhood and stuff. And they never actually heard a response from him. But one of the junior doctors came up to me in the corridor and was like, Emily, I don't think you're autistic. I think you just have high social anxiety. And that was kind of the end of the conversation there while I was on the unit.
Right. Okay.
And then I was discharged to the community team and they kind of brought it up again. And then my parents and I decided that we wanted me to be assessed. But if it wasn't for us wanting it, I don't think I would have been assessed.
That's mad. So really, you'd gone past all these professional people as such, and the fact that your meltdowns or shutdowns were described as, hysteric attacks really shows that no one was really that aware of your needs at that time.
Yeah, no, completely. And I think there's so much stigma about personality disorders that it was kind of, I think, seen through that lens that obviously it should not be personality disorders shouldn't be stigmatized. That's a whole nother conversation to be had around that. But I was kind of, I think they saw, oh, she's got an emerging personality disorder and just kind of left it at that.
Gosh, that's mad. I mean, and what you were saying about having that kind of stereotyped kind of view of autism, I'm very much of the opinion in that you don't know what you don't know, and at that time you didn't know. You hadn't come into contact with, anything other than that kind of stereotypical view of maybe autism in the movies or like TV shows and stuff. And the fact that you can see this autism in this girl, yet now, the kind of strides you've made and what you kind of stand for as well is really interesting.
Yeah.
So how long did you have to wait for your autism diagnosis? Was there a kind of wait time, or were you seen relatively quickly?
So we actually went private.
I do not blame you.
Which obviously was a great privilege that my parents were able to go privately. And I think I feel a bit guilty when I say I went privately, because obviously people are stuck on these waiting lists for years, and it's just so wrong. But I mean, fortunately, my parents were in the position that we could go privately. So we kind of made this decision. So I was discharged from the unit in the December. So I started seeing the community team in like the January, and I had my diagnosis by the June. So we I'm not sure exactly when we started having conversations with whoever it was that ended up assessing me, but it was a relatively fast process, really. So I was diagnosed in the June, just before I turned 17, because I was due to go to uni. Well, I did go to uni, but I was going to go away for uni the following year. And really, my parents wanted to know if I was autistic, because it would obviously change the needs that it didn't change the needs, but it kind of changed the support I was entitled to and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, we wanted to get me assessed before university.
It's interesting how you say you feel guilty about going private, because I totally understand how that must feel, because it, like you said, is a privileged position. But I just think if you have access to it, then why the hell not? And the fact that you were seen that much quicker is, it's definitely worth it. But I get what you mean. It's difficult to admit to being like, oh, I could go private, but I'm glad you did.
I just feel so, it just breaks my heart, all the people that are stuck on these lists for years, who are really struggling with their mental health. And I mean, the problem is obviously a diagnosis doesn't magically fix anything whatsoever, because you get the diagnosis and then there's not that much support that goes alongside it anyway, especially if you're older when you get diagnosed. But I mean, for me, it did help massively. And I know that if I'd had to wait 2-3 years, however long it would be, I don't know what would have happened.
And at least you were before, I mean, obviously you'd gone through primary and secondary school not knowing, but at least you'd kind of got it before that next step in education to university.
Yeah, it actually meant I got a year of intervention with the Senko at school, which was great.
Oh, really?
This was just before I started year 13. So
really? Okay. I
had a whole year of kind of being able to work with curriculum support, which I hadn't had before. And that was great. But I think that's probably partly because I loved my Senko. She was amazing.
I do find Senkos are they're usually people on the same level as you, and usually just get it.
Yeah, she was brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice to hear. It's nice to hear actually being able to access support and finding it helpful.
Yeah. I mean, my school were really good, but before I was diagnosed anyway, my school were very good at kind of helping put in adjustments for my anxiety, and because obviously I'd been unwell and out of school anyway. So they were very good at that. But I think obviously having that autism diagnosis meant I was able to access kind of autism specific intervention, which the Senko and curriculum support could give me, which I wasn't able to access before that.
Okay. And so you're now 20. And so what year of your studies are you in now? I'm
in my third year of uni.
You're in your third year. So is this your last year? Or it's your last year? Okay. And do you think you're going to stay on and do a master's, or do you think you're done with education?
Well, I don't know, because I'm doing nursing. So when I finish next September, I can't believe it's so soon. When I finish next September, I will be a qualified nurse. So okay. I don't technically need to do anything more for that, but I do want to do further education. There's a couple of master's programs I'm interested in autism studies. But then I'm also interested in kind of psychology and children and adolescent mental health. So it's very difficult to pick one master's degree that you want to do.
At least you've got options, and like you say, you'll be a qualified nurse, and that's quite a nice position to be in. Like you say, you don't necessarily have to go on and do something, or maybe you could wait a couple of years or something and do a master's potentially. But that's exciting. Yeah,
it's exciting. It's very daunting. I feel like time flies.
It really, when you're at uni, it really does, and you're like, how am I in my third year?
I know.
Oh, that's really exciting. And how are you juggling your studying with all the many things that I mentioned in your introduction, because you seem to do a bit of everything.
Yeah, I can't lie, it's very difficult. I mean, I've just been discharged from my psychology and mental health services, and literally every appointment my therapist would go, so how are all the commitments? Have you decided what you're going to drop yet? And I would go, I can't drop anything. There's nothing that I can drop. And every session she would spend 5 minutes going through the list of all my different commitments and would say, Emily, you're going to just get burnt out. And I would say to her, look, I cannot drop anything, because the stuff that I can drop, I don't want to drop, because I enjoy that stuff, and I kind of find meaning and purpose in it. So in her recent discharge letter that I got this week, it said something about considering my commitments and making sure I look after myself. I kind of just tell myself that it's not going to be forever anyway. Like, I'll finish uni next year, and then I won't have to juggle studies alongside everything. I don't have to work full time, so that would help.
Yeah, I mean, I get her point, but like you say, if it's something you enjoy and it's something you're, gaining experience from, and you're careful that you don't massively burn yourself out, then it does sound like a good kind of mix of interesting things to do.
Yeah, it's just hard, because I think like I would love to give so much more time to each kind of thing that I do. And that's why I say no to a lot of things, because I often get DMs like, oh, hey, would you like to be involved with this organisation or whatever? And I have to say no, because it's just not fair. Like, there's plenty of other people who could probably give a lot better input, maybe, because they might have more time and they might be able to dedicate kind of themselves to it more. And I just think it's not right taking on something I can't give myself fully to.
I mean, that's good that you're learning to say no, because I'm very much the same in that it's extremely difficult to, when someone reaches out to you and puts a lot of like thought into an email and stuff, you're like, oh, I'm so busy.
I know.
It's so tricky. And like, especially, I mean, I've had like emails like that before where I've been able to recommend like other autistic people, and they'll email me back and be like, oh, we're working with them now. And I'm like, yes.
I've been wanting to do that, but I don't want to give out people's names without asking them. So maybe I should. Yeah. Maybe I should ask if there's anyone that would actually be interested in being forwarded on.
It is, I mean, for me, it's relatively handy because I know like a few other autistic illustrators, so I can literally just like recommend them. And I've obviously like checked with them that that's okay. But yeah, it is quite handy to just be able to be like, I do not have the capacity to do this, but someone else might.
I've had to learn to word like what I say, because I just feel so guilty. I'm like, I just really cannot at the moment. And it makes you feel guilty, I think, a little bit, saying no. It's hard, isn't it?
It is really hard. And like, it's really difficult to like, I find just like wording emails, like formal emails, to be like, I'm very sorry, but at this time I cannot, due to my capacity, it's like, I don't know how to word it. I'm just really busy. I'm sorry.
I also think a lot of people don't realise that I'm a full-time student as well, because I don't really, I don't talk about it that much.
It's tricky as well, because I think sometimes like, if you have like a bigger following, people assume that you're like a team of like people behind you, or like a company, and you're like, no, it's just me.
I think especially for you as well, because you kind of have a like 21 and Sensory, a podcast. It's a name. That could be a team, couldn't it? But you do great stuff.
And how have you found, like, talking about like followers and growth and stuff, how have you found like your experience on Twitter, like how, because obviously that's how I found you, and your writing's like really relatable and honest, and it's really nice how you use like the threads to break down topics and stuff. But what kind of drew you to Twitter in the first place, and how are you managing with like the growth of it?
Well, when I was about 13 or 14, I actually had an anonymous blog on WordPress, and I kind of had a Twitter account to go alongside it that I didn't really use very much, but I'd kind of post my blog posts on there and stuff. And I mean, at the time, I would literally just, every day after school, I'd just go on and I would just blog about my day. I'd be like, it was awful. I didn't go to any lessons. I felt so anxious, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of had the Twitter account set up from that, and I was following a few different people. And then when I decided I wanted to use it publicly, I kind of deleted all those tweets. And I don't know, I think the first tweet I probably did was probably something, it was probably like World Autism Awareness Day or something like that. And I think I was at school and, in sixth form, and I think I just posted a tweet like on my freeze. And I remember checking it back after my lesson and being like, oh my days, I have like 100 likes and loads of comments. And that was the first time I kind of, I suppose, met the autistic community on Twitter, because a lot of people like commented on it, and then I started following them back, and then I kind of just ended up finding like loads more people through that.
Okay.
And then I don't know, I just posted the odd tweet here and there, not very much, and then I suppose I started using it a lot. Yeah, and then people started following, which was a bit weird at first.
Do you find you can still say what you want to say, is what I'm trying to say, is that, you know, you don't feel like you're being kind of, every move is being watched kind of thing?
I think I'm quite careful anyway, because I don't want to, because I suppose of professionalism, I want to make sure what I post is kind of, obviously how I feel and my beliefs, but I was kind of already careful because of that anyway. I don't know if I explained that right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like, you want to keep this kind of level of professional.
Yeah, but obviously it's not professional because I talk a lot about myself, but I wanted to like make sure I was not make sure I was very respectful from the beginning, and make sure that I kind of listened to different people's opinions, even when I didn't agree with them and stuff like that. So I kind of went in with that mindset anyway. And then as people started following me, and you do get some people who are quite critical of what you write, but then I just think, well, was what I wrote, I guess I always check in with myself, and I'm like, was what I wrote okay? And if it's not, then I will kind of reevaluate that. But normally it is, and normally it's just kind of people who have these bad, well, what I would think of as kind of bad opinions about autism, thinking that it's an illness and thinking that it's awful and being like anti-vax and stuff like that. And I kind of just ignore those comments, because when I've engaged with them in the past, it doesn't really do much.
That's interesting. Do you find that you've kind of developed a bit more of a like thicker skin in terms of like, not like hate comments, but like, you know, people saying things that they believe are true and you're just like, well, they're really not?
Yeah. I think when it's stuff like that, I kind of, I mean, I have responded a couple of times, but I'm not mean. I kind of just respond with like a factual statement. I'll be like, it's not an illness, or I'll be like, actually, vaccines don't cause autism. But you never get very far with that. I think the comments I struggle with more is kind of more when they're like personal, but I don't really get many of those. I get some DMs that are very bizarre and a bit inappropriate at times, but I've kind of learned to ignore those.
Gosh, I don't know how to unpack that. Like, it's so the internet is such a weird place, but it's important you're doing what you're doing, and I think it's really great, you know, all the things that you spend your time on, no matter how, you know, many other people want to put you down or say very odd things to you. It's important that you're there to just talk about your mental health and autism, and I don't know, it's nice just to have someone to relate to online. I think a lot of people, when they find out they're autistic, they go in search of that like community and people to relate to, and I think a lot of people gravitate towards your Twitter because it's just, I don't know, it's just really relatable, and it's like, oh, someone else gets it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I started, how I felt after I posted that first tweet about autism, and then like lots of different autistic people commented. I was like, oh my days, there's loads of autistic people on here. And then I started following them, and I mean, Twitter was where I learned the most about autism. Like, the stuff that I know now is because I've learned that through other autistic people, and I suppose developed my own understanding of myself at the same time. But if it wasn't for Twitter, I don't know what my knowledge of autism would be like right now, because that's where I learn like most of what I know.
Yeah,
And I guess
same.
I'm still learning. Every day I learn something new on Twitter.
Yeah, me too. It is good for like first-hand experience and people being like, I'm struggling with this right now. And it's like, it's quite nice to see people being quite open about things they're struggling with and other people like pitching in with like coping mechanisms and stuff they've tried. So it does feel like a nice sense of community.
Yeah, it does.
And I can't believe you're almost at 30,000 followers. That's a lot of people.
I know. I did notice that recently, and it makes my heart rate rise a little bit. But most of the time, I just ignore it. Because I suppose when I'm going about my daily life, like, and I'm just tweeting, like, it doesn't. I don't know. I don't always notice the follower count.
I think that's a good thing though, because you wouldn't want that to change your content as such, would you? You still want to be you and say what you want to say. So
yeah,
I think it's important to stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
And so do you find, obviously, because you're juggling bits and pieces, like, you know, like writing for like your Twitter, and I know that you also like write kind of on and off for your own blog as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you find that you have to kind of, are you someone that likes a routine or a schedule? Like, I'm just thinking in terms of all your commitments. Do you have like kind of meetings and stuff as like a trustee and, you know, being on different kind of trusts and councils and stuff? Do you find that you have to kind of really manage your time?
Yes, I do have to manage my time. I have a diary, and people laugh at me for having a paper diary, but I love my paper diary. I would not be without it. I actually designed it myself on a website this year.
Oh, so, amazing.
Yes. So it has all the stuff in it that is actually helpful and not unhelpful. And it's very pretty. And to be honest, I just look at it sometimes because it's quite pretty.
That's what you want in a diary.
Anyway, yes, the diary helps. The diary helps massively. I don't know how I would organise my time without it. I was going to say something else about the routine and the schedule. I suppose it's not like a regular routine or schedule, like the appointments and meetings and stuff. It kind of just comes up whenever. But I'm not very good at sticking to a routine, you know. I know autistic people, I suppose the view is that autistic people like routine, and I do like routine, but I also struggle sticking to a routine. Because my brain kind of just gets distracted.
It is quite a habit to form as well, like a routine, isn't it? Like you kind of have to be consistent with it in order to kind of stick to it, which can be really tricky.
Yeah.
I'm also definitely with you on the whole paper diary thing. Like I have a Muji like weekly planner, and it's like my kind of go-to where I just like dump everything that I'm supposed to remember.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, they're so helpful.
I think so. And also you can kind of just like doodle in them at the same time. So
yeah. And you can see your week. I think that's what I find really helpful. I can see like visually what I need, what I'm doing on what day. And I think on a Monday when I open it, because I mean, sometimes I like the idea of opening it on a Sunday to know my week, but I kind of try to block out the next week and I just try to think about the weekend when it's the weekend. So, but when I do open it on like a Monday and I can actually see like my week laid out, it kind of reduces a lot of my anxiety because I kind of know what's happening and when.
Yeah. No, I get you. Like, it's nice to be able to just like dump stuff in it and not have to worry about it until you get to that week and think, oh, I have this coming up.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
It's quite handy.
And it helps with like when I have like loads of like random bits of stuff to do, I kind of write in when I'm going to do it, and then I don't have to think about the fact I've got loads of random stuff to do because I can see when I need to do it, if that makes sense.
And also I just find that you can like colour code and stuff and like highlight sections and just, I don't know if you're as obsessed with stationery as I am, but
yes, definitely. The highlight of my year was September, being able to go to a shop and buy loads of new stationery. I absolutely loved it.
Excellent. It's so difficult, isn't it, like during the pandemic, because it's not the same like looking at stationery online. Like you want to go and like literally touch it and be like, what does this pen, like how heavy is it, what does it feel like?
Yes. And like this was the problem, because although I designed my diary online, I was very, very worried about how it was going to feel when I got it, because I couldn't feel the texture of the diary, and I was like, if it's bad, I'm just gonna have to send it back.
Just be like, I cannot deal with this diary.
No. Yeah.
Oh, the stress. And so putting aside all the stuff that you spend lots of time on, what do you do in terms of like hobbies, and do you have kind of any special interests? I know that you do you have a horse, or is it a horse that you kind of have access to?
Yeah, he's not my horse, unfortunately.
Okay.
He's my mum's friend's horse, but I get to go and ride him whenever I like. So
Amazing.
yeah, I get to go up a couple of times or a few times a week normally, and kind of just look after him and go on a nice hack around the fields, which I very much enjoy.
That sounds so therapeutic.
It is. And that's when I listen to a podcast, because I think, although it's very therapeutic and you would think it's lovely walking, like kind of just like galloping around a very, very nice field, I find it difficult when my head's not occupied. I don't know if that makes sense. So I listen to a podcast at the same time, or music or something, so that it occupies my brain as well, because I struggle with like mindfulness and doing one thing at a time.
Do you find like your brain just doesn't shut off? Like mine just like cycles through random crap.
Completely. And it's like 10 different thoughts in your head at once.
That's a good idea, to just like just keep your ears distracted at least, and just, you know,
it helps me concentrate more on the ride anyway. Like if I'm not listening to something, I don't concentrate as much on the ride.
That makes sense. I get you. Like it's almost like when you, like if you use like a fidget toy, like sometimes you'll like listen better if you're like fidgeting kind of thing. It's almost like the same thing.
Yeah, in class at school I would used to kind of do Sudokus and like crosswords and stuff, and I think the teachers were like, okay, that's fine, at least she's in the lesson and paying attention, kind of.
Yeah, that counts. Also, that is good for your brain. Like, what would a teacher not love about that?
Well, schools, they like you to be sat face forward, eye contact, staring at the wall, very still, straight back.
At all times, must engage. Ugh.
Yes, completely un-neurodivergent friendly.
Exactly. I don't miss that. So do you have any other hobbies other than just kind of horse related? Obviously, listening to podcasts is a very good hobby that I would endorse.
Horse riding, I enjoy writing and reading. Though I don't read as much as I used to. When I was little, I used to read about I would get through 3 novels a day, whereas I don't really have time for that anymore.
I guess it's difficult if you're studying as well. Like it's a lot to fit in.
Yeah, and I'm not very good about thinking about multiple things at once. So if I start a book, I like to sit there and read the book for 2-3 hours at a time, so that I can read the book and finish the book. I'm not very good at I like the idea of reading a book for 20 minutes before I go to bed at night, but it just doesn't work for me, because then I just won't go to bed because I want to finish the book.
I get that. Like once you're invested, you want to see it through.
Yeah, I don't want to leave it because my brain is occupied by the book.
Also, I find if I do that, if I dip in and out of a book, I have to go back a few pages because I've forgotten I have to recap.
Yeah. I do wish I read more now though, because growing up, reading was definitely one of my special interests. I loved the library. I thought libraries were the best place in the world. And books, just getting a new book was like Christmas.
I always feel like that. It's just, I don't know, it's finding the time to read them, but just getting a new book is the best thing. And the smell of a new book, I don't know what it is, I just love it.
Oh my gosh. Yes,
it's so good.
I was never a fan of the smell of library books. I always thought they smelled a bit musty, but well, I didn't have to pay for them, so.
Yeah, the old ones, they're a bit funny, aren't they?
Yeah.
No, I'm with you on that. I was just going to ask you, because I mentioned fidget toys earlier, are you a fidget toy kind of person?
I don't know if I am as much now, but going back a couple of years, yes. At school, I would always have a collection of tangles. I'd have squishies. I never liked fidget spinners. I did not understand that phase at all. They just did not. I don't know. They just didn't work with my. I didn't vibe with them. They didn't really help. But other stuff, I used to have this little bracelet that was that was a bead bracelet, and I could just twist the beads round and round and up and down. I remember when I broke it, I had a very big meltdown because the beads went everywhere, and I used to take it everywhere, so I was not happy on that day.
That's the stress of if you lose a fidget toy or it's a favourite one. That's my constant stress is what if I lose this fidget cube or something? I can't.
I've never had a fidget cube either. Do you like those?
They're good. They're quite noisy though, so they're not like the most like discreet thing to use. But if I'm like working from home, I'm like, yes, just like clicking away. It'd be really annoying in an office.
Yeah, I still fiddle a lot. Like I always fiddle with like a ring, or I pick something, or I do fiddle with a lot of stuff now. But I don't. It's weird because I used to take my tangle everywhere. Like it was always in my pocket. And then I think I started uni and I became very self-conscious of it. And I was like, yeah, I can't. I need to learn to function without a fidget toy, which I wish I didn't have to, but I felt like I needed to. So
it's difficult though. Like when you go into other settings as well, you just kind of rely on like, I don't know, like your hands to fidget, or like whatever you've got on your person. Like, I don't know if you're wearing a lanyard or something, because you don't want to like stand out. I do get that.
Wouldn't it be awesome though, like if we just went to like the GP or like a health appointment and like the health professional was just there like fiddling with a fidget cube? I'd love that.
I'd love to see that.
I know.
That would be so nice.
It feels unacceptable.
Yeah, like I know there's this whole like connotation of like fidget toys being childish, but I really don't think they are. Like I feel like anyone can use them. You don't have to be autistic. Like if you enjoy using a fidget toy, do it. Like why does it have to be based on an age?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm with you on that. And just kind of like, I always feel like it's a good thing to ask about like how people managed like during the pandemic. And obviously, you know, as you've mentioned, like you have some mental health conditions. Like, did you find it like quite tough? Obviously you were studying as well. How did that kind of impact the whole sort of your year?
It feels like ages ago since the March of the, like when it first happened. Like that feels like so long ago. So I was still in my first year of uni. Crikey. So it's like nearly 2 years ago now, isn't it? Back come March. But yeah, it was very, very difficult. But I think it's the first time I've actually got through like, I would say a crisis period in my head without like ending up in hospital. So it was kind of quite, I don't know, quite significant for me in that I actually managed okay. Like I continued with my studies. I didn't really have I didn't have like a crisis or anything, which considering how stressed and anxious I felt with like no routine, no structure, as like so many autistic people I think felt, and obviously anyone who wasn't autistic as well, like felt not having their routine and what they knew. It was hard, but I managed. I think my OCD, it definitely impacted my OCD because like when I was about 16, I think was probably when my contamination OCD was the worst. And like I remember last March, like just these messages of wash your hands. Like I was like, I'm always told to wash my hands less, and I'm always told that it doesn't matter if I touch that, then it's okay, because even if there's a germ there, it's not going to make me really, really ill. But then all of a sudden, like everything that I'd been like working on in therapy to like rationalize with my brain that you can touch a table that someone else has touched and it will be okay. It felt like suddenly like everyone was like, well, you can't touch that because it might have COVID on it and you might die and your family might die. That was really difficult, especially with kind of, I guess my OCD is like quite focused around like making sure my family is safe and my friends. Like I was less worried about me getting ill and more so them. And I think it was difficult because I think everyone was so worried about, well, not everyone, but most people were worried about COVID kind of and their loved ones. And it definitely made my OCD worse.
I remember seeing like people talking about their OCD like during the pandemic, like on Instagram and stuff, and just their hands being so like red raw, and just like my friend as well who really struggles with contamination OCD, and just feeling so bad because like you said, like these people have worked so hard in therapy to you know, not act on compulsions and things like that, and it must have been so tricky to, you know, be told, oh, there's a pandemic and that's going to undo it all, kind of thing, all your hard work.
It was like everything I had been told was irrational was suddenly rational. And so all the thoughts I had that I had been taught to tell myself were irrational were suddenly rational, and I suddenly had to act on compulsions. But then I remember my therapist being like, yeah, but you still don't need to wash your hands for like 2 minutes at a time. You still only need to wash your hands, like, you don't need to wash your hands like constantly. Like, she was still like that you obviously, there's a limit. Like, you don't have to take it as OCD. I don't know how to explain what she meant, but like, I
get what you mean though. Like, it's, you're getting conflicting messages from a therapist and the government, and
yeah
that's not the most helpful thing, is it? But
no, it was just a bad year for anxiety for everyone, I think. But yeah, I remember being very anxious.
And how have you found like getting back out in the world? Did you find that, like, because a lot of autistic people I've spoken to have been very like desensitized, and like everything's louder and just more in your face. Have you found that at all?
I remember going into a building for the first time, like a different building other than my house for the first time, and being like, this is weird. And I remember having to speak to people there and being like, wait, how do I like socialize? How do I talk to people again? And I was like, I've genuinely forgotten like all my social skills. It was hard. And yeah, noise, I don't know whether I find stuff louder now than I did before the pandemic. I'm not sure, but I think definitely like socializing, I found all of a sudden like harder, I think, than I found it before. It's kind of like I'd forgotten how to socialize.
Like, you almost have to learn it all again.
Yeah.
That's what I was like annoyed about. I was like, I've worked really hard to like build up this resistance to like, you know, social situations, and then after the pandemic I was like, I have lost this all.
Yeah.
It's tricky. Well, I'm glad to hear that, like, you know, you were able to like manage and cope and, like you say, avoid like a crisis in what was a very weird and tricky time in terms of, you know, like the news every day and stuff like that was really negative all the time, and it was, you know, very tricky to avoid. So I think it sounds like you did really well to, you know, manage your own kind of life during that time.
Yeah.
I feel like we've mentioned your Twitter and stuff, and we should probably mention where else people can follow you online. So do you want to kind of mention your social media handles and websites or anything you want to promote?
Oh, that's very kind of you. Well, I have my blog, which is www.authenticallyemily.uk. But you can find that through my social medias anyway, because it's just linked on there. And my Twitter and Instagram are at It's Emily Katy, Katy.
Excellent. I will put those in the show notes as well, so people can just click on them. I like that you're kind of the same across everything. I think it's very smart when people do that.
I like that too.
It just makes it so much easier to like find people.
Yeah. I used to have a different Twitter name, and then it was kind of different across all, but yeah, I like it being the same too. It feels more smooth.
We've been almost chatting for 45 minutes, so that's gone really quick.
Yeah, it has, hasn't it?
It's always the way. I'm always like, oh my God, I'm an hour in and there's so much more I want to say.
Yeah.
And we didn't chat about you being a not alone talk host. I'm just intrigued as to, is it like a regular, because I know you kind of do it quite regularly, is it something like you commit to like every other week or something?
Yeah, I host it once a week. Okay. So I meant to do it on Tuesdays, but I kind of always end up being on placement or have something on. So the team, they're quite flexible. We kind of just swap days whenever someone can't do it. But yeah, it started, I think, during the first lockdown. April, who's at Harmless Life on Twitter, she started it, and then and then I think she wanted to go down to just doing it one day a week, but I used to participate in it basically as a participant, and she asked if anyone else wanted to kind of host occasional night, like one night a week, or for example. And so I offered to do one night a week, as did some others, and yeah, it's been going since then. Yeah, I really like it. It's nice. You kind of get to chat with the same people who kind of join in every day or a few times a week, and then you also get kind of new people who just come across it on Twitter. And I think it's quite a nice, like, safe space.
Yeah, I think it's such a nice idea. Like, I'll like come across like the threads where people are just, you know, just like chatting, and it's such a nice, I don't know, just quite a like informal, like nice place to chat. And literally, you know, if you are feeling alone, you kind of you gravitate towards social media, I find. So it's quite a good like way of doing it, I think.
Yeah, we've had a lot of like quite nice feedback from people, I think, who like, especially I think people who have been like shielding, like even like post like shielding, so like people who have stayed inside for their health and stuff even once they've been told they can go out. We've had a lot of nice messages saying how much it helps, like for them to have that like every day and kind of to be able to talk to kind of the same people. So yeah, it's really nice to be a part of it.
Yeah, and nice that people can just, you know, pitch up and like you can check in on people and stuff. I just think that's such a nice like little sense of community. So
it is.
Well, it sounds like you are doing so many great things, and I really appreciate the fact that you've taken almost an hour of your evening out to chat to me.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on.